Hi, everybody, and welcome to the OutMarket.Pro podcast. I'm your host, Mark Stein. At OutMarket.Pro, we're always searching for innovative new services and programs to help small business owners. And this is why we're excited about our recent partnership with Navistone, a Cincinnati-based company that helps business owners enjoy the many benefits of digitally powered direct mail. Yes, you heard it right. Digitally powered direct mail. We're really excited about this technology, and we've just signed up our first client to begin implementing it. So to learn more about Navistone and how the technology works, I'm here today with Richard Israel, Navistone's Vice President of Channels. So we're going to do a deep dive without getting too terribly technical into Navistone's platform. So welcome, Richard.
It's great to be here, Mark. I appreciate the invite.
Great. So you're located where?
So our corporate headquarters is in the Midwest, Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm a fully remote employee, as are most of our team scattered around the country. I'm in Northern California.
Got it. The Bay Area or further north?
The Bay Area.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, so let's start out with just a general overview of Navistone, the technology, maybe a little company info, how long you've been in business, et cetera.
Sure. So a little bit about the company. As you stated correctly, Navistone is all about leveraging what we refer to as digital intent signals. Essentially, we are tracking unknown visitors to client websites, to your client's website. And with our technology, we're able to understand what their intent is, what their interest levels are for the product or service that they're looking at. And from there, we do something quite unique in this space, which is we model, segment, and then score each one of those visitors based on that intent. From there, we enable the delivery, as you said correctly, a direct mail postcard as the advertising vehicle rather than a traditional digital ad, which, as many of you probably know, digital retargeting has been around for, I think, close to 15 years now. And so this is definitely a newer technology. And it's leveraging a postcard, a direct mail postcard, as the delivery vehicle.
Interesting that you used traditional digital ad. As somebody who's been around long enough to remember when it wasn't very traditional and postcards were very traditional. Interesting that it sort of flipped. And one of the things that appealed to me most about this technology is that it is using state-of-the-art Web3 technology to deliver a 1960s technology, a postcard. I love irony, and there's something beautifully ironic about using this technology to deliver the postcards.
There is. We've really flipped the script, I guess you could say, on retargeting. And the main reason is there's a need. There's a huge need. It's reported that the average online consumer can see anywhere from 5 to sometimes as many as 10,000 digital ads in a day. Most people don't realize when they're scrolling through their, especially their social feeds, sometimes 1 out of every 3 things that they see in their feed are cleverly disguised ads. So they're literally seeing, dozens of ads every few minutes, and it adds up to thousands and thousands of ads over the course of a day. And so we're able to basically cut through all of that clutter and deliver a postcard instead of a digital ad as your retargeting vehicle. And the beauty of the postcard is that there's virtually no competition today in the mailbox, right? So the average US household receives 1 to 2 pieces of direct mail marketing a day. That's it. not including the first week of November during election season. So we'll wipe that one out. I don't think anybody looks forward to that time of year. But if you take that week of the year out, it's 1 to 2 pieces a day. So by leveraging a postcard, you're enabling your messaging to stand out in the crowd and have the impact that you intend as an advertiser and drive a much higher conversion as a result.
So the decline in direct mail increases the value of this particular piece coming in. 20 years ago, we had this huge stack of mail and a lot of direct mail. So this would not be nearly as valuable 10, 20 years ago as it would be today.
That's correct. Well, 20 years ago, most people were still getting, their bank statements and their gasoline statements, your utility bills, all their mortgage statements. Everything was coming in the mail. So, when you went and got your mail out of the mailbox 20 years ago, it usually wasn't a happy moment across that day, right? Because it's all about money going out as opposed to money coming in. And it wasn't necessarily a pleasurable experience because it's all bills usually, if you think back then. Nowadays, most people are paying all their bills. They're doing all that online. So their mailboxes aren't cluttered the way they used to be with that. And what's really left is, like I said, 1 or 2 pieces of direct mail marketing, and then things that people actually want to receive in their mailbox. People who have loyalties to certain brands, like maybe you have your brand loyal to Banana Republic, and so you have your Banana Republic catalog that comes once a month, or you're loyal to Lululemon or Nike, and you're getting those catalogs once a month or whatever. And those are okay because you're loyal to those brands and you want to see what the latest and greatest is. So you're welcoming that in your mailbox. So it's a very different time today versus, to your point, 10, 20 years ago.
Talk a little about the quality of the postcard. And I don't mean an individual postcard, but in general. And I've got one that I responded to just yesterday. Things usually don't show up on the screen. This is a tub luxury bath company, tub enclosures. I'm newly moved into a new condo, enclosures, tubs and showers. And I held on to it for a couple of weeks and made the phone call yesterday in conjunction with my partner to make sure that we both were available. And we have an appointment coming up this Friday. So talk a little bit about the postcard itself. I think this is the same size that you send, 6x9, double-sided, full color. This has a glossy sheen to it, but long-winded, but talk a little bit about postcards in general and the value of those coming in direct mail.
Yeah, Mark, really, really good point. And yes, that's similar to some of the types of postcards that we would be sending out as well. There's a lot of uniqueness to the postcard, and it really does stand out on its own when you think about direct mail. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I've already kind of spoke to, it's 1 or 2 pieces of direct mail marketing in your mailbox a day, so you don't have that competition. But there are there's other things that come into play that really drive the conversion of a postcard. Our technology, so starting with our technology is giving the advertiser the ability to target those folks that are the most engaged for the product or service that they're looking at. So we start there, right? The ability to actually target those that are most engaged. We also have the ability to uniquely create different types of creative for a campaign, which means we can personalize the postcards down to a level that you really can't do in traditional direct mail, the kind that comes in an envelope, if you will. Also, there's very little, as I said, there's very little distraction, because when the individual goes to their mailbox and grabs their mail, they're not on their cell phone or their laptop. They're typically walking from their mailbox back into their home, and they're actually looking at their mail. Sometimes they sit down, people will sit down at their kitchen table or at their desk, and they'll continue to thumb through their mail. They're not distracted. And so that brings even more attention to the advertisement, the messaging, the picture, what have you, on the postcard.
You don't have to open it.
Yeah.
There's no envelope to open. So it's right there in your face.
Yeah. Well, so what I'm fond of saying is postcards are the only advertising vehicle that guarantee you 100% open rate, because there is no other form of direct mail other than a postcard that guarantees 100% open rate. So even if the consumer does throw the postcard away, they still see the image. They'll still read the headline before they throw it away, even during election season, right? So the beauty there is you do get 100% open rate, which contributes to the conversion. But I think the number one reason why postcards work so well and why they are so sticky is the life expectancy of a postcard is 17 days.
Wow. So
when you contrast that to, let's say, an email, a branded email, which lasts 10 seconds, it's a big difference, right? People hold on to postcards. They pin them on their bulletin boards. They stick them on the refrigerator. They'll put it on a strategically placed location within their kitchen counter for somebody else in the family to look at it. There's a lasting power unlike any other advertising vehicle. And because of that, it creates a long tail effect, which means these campaigns have a much longer life expectancy than your other both direct mail as well as other different, retargeting methods, as we've talked about previously. So that life expectancy really contributes more than I think anything else to the success of driving the high conversion that postcards drive.
The ability to customize a postcard based on some criteria that you're able to determine, and this may dovetail with scoring, engagement scoring.
So yeah, so what you're describing is first, as it pertains to the creative itself and how we can leverage that based on the intent of that unknown visitor. So let's start there. Imagine you had an advertiser who was an automotive dealership. And let's say the automotive dealership was interested in a campaign to sell their SUVs and their EVs, let's say, and red cars, just for fun, right? You could run a campaign with 4 different creatives. Your first creative might be let's call it the branded creative, right? So it's focused on the brand, the auto dealership's name, their service business, the different things the benefits that brand of that auto dealership offers its customers. The second postcard might be a postcard that is specifically catering to those people who are interested in purchasing an SUV. So there's a picture of, the latest, greatest model of SUVs that the dealership carries, and so on. The third postcard could be the same type of postcard similar to the SUV, but that one is geared towards, let's say, EVs. And again, maybe there's a picture of the latest and greatest EV on the lot. And then the fourth postcard, kind of for fun, has a picture of a red car for those people who are interested in red cars. Very hypothetical. And so what happens through the visits these unknown browsers are conducting on this site, on this automotive dealership site, we are tracking what they're doing, what pages they're looking at. Are they doing searches in the search bar for SUVs or EVs or red cars, and so on and so forth? We track 18 different points. And once we've done all that, we're able to, as I said earlier, we model we model and segment and then score those individuals based on the intent that they're showing. So we're able to see, wow, this individual is showing some intent towards purchasing an SUV. Let's send this person a postcard that focuses on SUVs. This person over here is surfing and showing intent towards purchasing an EV. So let's send that individual a postcard on EVs. And then this other person seems to be interested in red cars. We don't know why, but let's send them a postcard on red cars. And everybody else who is not necessarily showing any intent, we're going to just send them the standard branded postcard to cover all bases. So that's unique to our technology. Nobody else does that in this space. And that's also what contributes to such high conversion.
So you'd be tracking the number of times they go to the SUV page, or if they only went to the SUV page, then they're not highly engaged, but we could track that visit and that would trigger the SUV postcard.
Right. So it could be a combination of maybe they came to the dealership site 2 or 3 different times. Maybe they came from their desktop once, maybe they came from their mobile phone once. That would be, 2 trips, if you will, to the dealership. Perhaps they drilled down and they not only looked at an SUV, but they started to, how most dealerships, you can kind of build your own model. They went in and they started to build their dream SUV car. We're going to pick all that up. We're going to see all that. Or maybe another individual, they were kind of surfing the inventory and they were looking at all maybe they were looking at used SUVs that were on the lot or whatever, but we're going to see every activity that takes place. And through our algorithms, we're going to be able to put together the modeling and that segmentation that allows us to eventually score those individuals based on their purchasing intent towards an SUV.
Is there one piece of code that's put on all pages that is doing the tracking, or would you put a separate piece of code on the SUV page, a unique piece of code for SUV page, as opposed to the EV page?
Yeah, so technically speaking, we didn't really talk much about that, but the actual tracking code, it's just a JavaScript. It's typically not a heavy lift for marketing agencies to place the tagging code on their client's website. If they're already using, let's say, Google Tag Manager, then it's actually pretty easy because you can use Google Tag Manager to place our similar tag, if you will. But to your point, it is a singular tag that would be going on the site. And that singular tag is going to be tracking those site visitors across their entire journey.
Okay. And you mentioned repeat visits. Obviously, or maybe not so obviously, a company would not want to send, if the visitor is visiting once a day and looking at his or her prized SUV, we don't want to send them, we might want to send them a postcard every day, but the business owner would not. So there's a mechanism to suppress unless it's a certain amount of time that's elapsed. How does that work? Just generally.
Yes. So there are numerous parameters that typically our agency will control and determine prior to turning a campaign on. And certainly one of the important parameters that you're bringing up is, well, how often do we really want to send a postcard to these unknown visitors? What if somebody comes back every day for a month? Do we want to send 30 postcards out? That would not be a best practice in our industry. We would not recommend you send 30 postcards out in 30 days. Instead, we probably recommend, why don't you send one out on that first visit, and then if they continue to come back, wait another 30 days and then send a second postcard. Or alternatively, you could do a remail. So let's say somebody comes back to the site You could do a remail and send them a second postcard, a different postcard. That would be okay, because you'd have different messaging. Maybe it's a different call to action, etc. So that would be, I think, the exception to that 30-day gap that you're waiting to send, another postcard.
So maybe on the second visit, let's say within 30 days, you might send them a special offer. Hey, you know that they're more interested, send them a discount.
Right. So any sort of call to action to generate that activity to get them to come back. Again, perhaps come into the dealership, in this case, right, to purchase the car. Some type of call to action that's different than the first one.
Okay. At the very beginning, you mentioned unidentified visitors. And for our audience, let's put some definition to that. What do you mean by that?
So let's continue to use the dealership as an example. If somebody comes to that dealership's site, unless they fill out a form saying, hey, I want you to call me, I'm interested in this car, the dealership has no way of knowing who that individual is. They are considered essentially an unknown visitor, an unknown browser. On average, more than 90%, and there are estimates out there, it's as high as 95%, depending upon who you ask. One of the leading authorities in that category, MailChimp, says it's 95%. Whether it's 90 or 95%, we can all agree that it's the vast majority of your visitors are coming to your site and they're unknown to you, the advertiser. You don't know who they are. So what we're really doing is we're giving you a chance to remarket back to them, these unknown visitors, because of our ability to identify them using our technology, and then again, serve up that postcard. That's really the difference there.
And with this technology in general, you could retarget ads to people, but there's no way you're going to get a physical address to be able to mail something. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I'm following you on the retarget ads.
Well, traditional retargeting, in terms of digital, you can resend to a visitor on the website through a digital ad.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we've all been there, right? We've all been there, done that. I always like to cite the proverbial, I just bought a pair of shoes on such and such a site, and then I go to this. Seems to always happen on my my visits to ESPN. I spent a lot of time there checking out scores and stuff, and without fail, right after I bought a pair of shoes, that company will retarget me with a digital ad to buy the shoes that I already bought.
Right.
Which always drives me crazy, because that's one of the biggest problems with digital retargeting, traditional digital retargeting, is it's incredibly wasteful, because they don't know that I bought the shoes. So it's like the blind leading the blind. They're gonna send me those ads no matter what, even though I may have just bought the shoes. They don't care. They're gonna keep sending them out. And so there is a lot of wasted money there. And that's part of the beauty of what we're doing, is we can avoid that waste, and really eliminate that waste.
One of the types of ads, as we're complaining, that really bug me the most and creep me out the most, and let's acknowledge there could be some creepy factor of having a postcard follow you after a website visit. And we'll talk about timing in a minute. How important is the call to action and having a special offer to the creative of the postcards?
So that's a really important question. Now you're diving more into campaign strategy, which is arguably the most important part of the campaign. Like, so what strategy are you going to implement, right? Are you looking for driving purchases of something? Are you looking to generate leads? looking to generate appointments. What's the goal of the campaign? And how does the goal of the campaign line up with the strategy, right? To your point, are you putting a promotion on the postcard? What kind of a call to action? Is there a discount? Is there this? There is that. I actually think the most important thing is to step back and align those two things, right? Align what's our goal? What do we want to accomplish? Do we want to sell product? Okay, well, if we want to sell product, then it's probably not going to hurt to have some kind of a promotion, right? Do we want to get appointments? It's a service company. Maybe they're an HVAC company. They want to get appointments. So how do we make sure we have a great call to action that's going to drive those appointments? And most importantly, track those, right? Track those appointments. We're going to deliver conversion. I was just going through some data from one of our agencies, home services company, that they ran a campaign in 2022. And I couldn't believe it when I read the data. They had a 25% response rate to the postcard. I mean, that's true. I think that's a record for us, maybe even as a company, certainly for any agency running any campaigns last year. I could not believe it was that high, 25%. Our postcards are going to generate response. There's no doubt they are going to generate a response. Again, think about it, right? The individual came to your advertiser's website. They're a legitimate prospect for the product or service. You've now sent them a postcard that they receive in the mail a few days after they've been to the site, reminding them of, hey, you went to our site, you were interested in looking at this or that. Let's continue the conversation. It's very powerful, and it's going to drive them to go back to that site, whether to purchase something online, to set up an appointment, to have somebody come out and measure, to put new flooring in your home, whatever it might be. It's going to create engagement, and it's up to really the agency in their conversation with their advertiser to make sure that their strategy is in alignment with the campaign itself.
Let me use my new client, just generically. I'm not going to specifically mention them, and the call to action and tactic that we're thinking about using. And then I'm also strategizing how to use it on my own marketing website for OutMarket.Pro. And I'd like to run that strategy by you. And this is to illustrate for others, and also help me optimize this campaign while we're on the call. So the first, for our first client, they are generally speaking a consultancy. So what we're trying to get is an appointment, people calling for an appointment or setting up an appointment. And there are a lot of consultants out there with a lot of different purposes. And my thought is to build a campaign around, hey, let me buy you a cup of coffee. And if we can't do it in person, I'll give you a $10 Starbucks gift card so we can have our conversation virtually, but over that cup of coffee, over your favorite Starbucks brand or drink. So evaluate that as a theme, and building the postcard around that theme of let me buy you a cup of coffee sort of thing, and providing that gift card if they call and set up an appointment.
Yeah, I love that as a strategy. I think it's creative. It will continue to drive engagement. The opportunity to get that appointment, that's what the campaign is focusing on, right? We've got to get the appointment. So I'm sure the metrics for this client that you're referring to, they know what a typical call costs them, right? All in, right? $300 a call, $600 a call, right? There's some metric they have out there that they know for every, for the 100 calls that we had last month, this is what we spent on average per call, right? It's in the hundreds, maybe even in the thousands in some cases, depending upon the kind of client. So to spend a few bucks on a cup of coffee is nothing, right? So the dollars invested are almost meaningless in the scheme of things for something like that. And I think they're well fed. Now, if it's a client that has a large volume of appointments, so like that would probably not be a great call to action for a flooring company. I'll go back to them, right? Because a flooring company, they go out all day long and do appointments, right? They're, because they're doing measurements and they're showing samples, and they'd have to factor that into the cost of doing business. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, but for them, they might want to do something a little bit different that focuses more on the, hey, we're going to come out, we're going to give you a free estimate, and maybe we're going to give you a discount on your second room you do, or something along those lines, right? Where they're going to give them the incentive, to have that appointment, have us come out. So again, I think the strategy of what that call to action looks like has to be tied into what are the goals of the campaign. And as I think you put it perfectly, the goal of your campaign for this client is you want to get appointments, and you're already investing a lot of money to reach these individuals. So let's put a few dollars more behind it. Let's buy them a cup of coffee so we can get them on the phone and we can have a conversation with them, or a Zoom call or whatever, for at least 15, 20 minutes. And it will be worth every dollar we spend on that coffee to do that.
And the conversion rate for this particular client, or the conversion value, is huge for their services that they offer, if someone takes them up on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to digress for just a second and comment on my green tent. I am really not ill. I'm not short on oxygen. And I need to work on my lighting, get a different lighting system. But if you happen to be doing a presentation in public and you forgot your belt, you just got to mention, hey, just let me acknowledge I don't have my belt today, and then you're okay beyond that. So that's that disclaimer there. If your fly is open, you can zip that back up. By the way, a friend of mine who is a consultant, traveling consultant, dressed in the dark and put on a slip only that was the same color as the dress, did not put on the skirt that was of the same color. And when she got in front of the lights, there was a lot of visuals that she didn't intend to, and intend to have. Really embarrassing. Okay, let's go to my website for a minute as an example. And we have, because we have a significant number of services, our current version of the website is to group the services into a category. So we have several pages with multiple services displayed on the same page. So no matter how good your algorithm is, you're probably not going to be able to tell. And at some point, we may be able to, with iris recognition, we'll be able to see what they're looking at on the page. And I think there is some technology that's working with that. So our strategy before we implement this campaign is to give a little bit of information about each of the products or each of the services, and then have a read more button that takes you to a dedicated page regarding each individual service. How does that sound as a structural strategy that probably sometimes needs to be made when you're contemplating a campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good structure. I think, the typical web structure I think you see today which really hasn't changed much. You know, you still have some websites, they'll have the hamburger up at the top right corner or left corner. Others will have everything on a header. Some will do it on their footer. God, I don't know why they do that. I mean, they're just, to digress for a second, there's data on there that it's a large percentage. I want to say like 60% of people who go to a website from their phone never get to the footer, ever. So why you would put something in the footer that you don't have in the header is beyond belief. But I digress. Yeah, I think most people, when they go to a website and they're looking at learning about a product or service, they're going to click on the About tab, or whether it's the hamburger or whatever, they're going to click on that About, because that's what they want. What does this company do? Want to learn a little bit about them. That, I think, is the tendency. And then everything else comes after that, right? So like in your case, you've got marketing services and creative services and business services and so on. Those are all listed below the About, right? So I think it's a great structure, and it does play well into the type of retargeting that postcards lend itself to, especially with our technology and being able to create campaigns that are unique to, let's say, those different services, right? So you could have a marketing services postcard, a creative services postcard, and a business services postcard if you wished, as well as a more, let's say, brand specific or almost brand agnostic postcard that just focuses on OutMarket.Pro. Generally speaking, you know, here's OutMarket.Pro at a high level.
Well, my strategy is to, once we see engagement around a specific dedicated page to one particular service, have a postcard dedicated to that service, not to the groupings, but to the services in particular.
Yeah.
Another strategy that we're looking at is we use email marketing, and we use a lot of video. So videos, and typically the videos home would be YouTube. So we are working on moving all of our videos to our blog page so that it will drive traffic. And it's an extra click that they're, because normally if it's on the email, they'll just be able to click it. It'll start the video. They are looking at it on YouTube, but this way they will be driven to our blog, and that's more traffic to the website. Should help with SEO and should help us know which service that they're looking at, since they're on our website, on the blog.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly worth testing. I would probably do a A/B split test, you know, and maybe I'd send half my emails with the option to go to essentially to the blog first to see the video, and then I'd maybe send my other half the other half of my emails where they're going to be clicking on the video right in the email, so it goes right to YouTube, just to be sure that you aren't losing traffic, right? And that you're not losing engagement. Because if you did an A/B split test and you learned that, wow, for 10% are that get the email where they can click on the video right on the email and it takes them right to YouTube, are engaged that way, but only 1% are engaged when they have to click on the link to our blog to then go see the video. Those would be pretty disparaging numbers, right? 1% versus 10%. So you may not want to do that as a strategy. So I would offer doing some kind of A/B split test to test that out, to see what the data looks like first before doing that.
Okay, good. But these are the kinds of discussions I want to have with our clients that are implementing this to really give them maximum value. And in that particular example that I just gave you, you're delivering someone to your website and are now able to send a postcard. Whereas if you're just sending them to YouTube, well, I guess no, because it's not going through the website. So you've got the ability to send a postcard, whereas the YouTube link is not going to give you that ability. They will bypass the website. So, but that's the kind of conversation I want to have,
Right.
Strategizing. You know, one thing that we have not mentioned, and I do want to look over my questions to be sure we're covering everything. We did not talk about the postal service method that these postcards are being delivered with, and that's first class postage. Talk a little bit about that and the consequence of that, as opposed to bulk mail, other ways that you guys could save money. I guess the clients can too, but not have the kind of impact. Talk about first class.
Yeah, first class mail, it's kind of a no-brainer now, especially because the mailboxes are so less crowded now than they used to be. But to your point, the beauty of first class mail, specifically in the continental US, so I have to pull out for a minute. We're pulling Alaska and Hawaii out of the conversation for a minute.
And not internationally.
Right. We only, right today, Navistone only operates in the 50 states and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. So those are, so we have all 50 states and Puerto Rico. But as far as first class mail goes, I believe the U.S. Postal Service states on their website that they essentially guarantee first class mail delivery within 2 to 3 business days of send to anywhere in the continental US. And for obvious reasons, they have to exclude Hawaii and Alaska. Now, I would also think that it depends where in Alaska. Most people don't. I was just there on vacation, and what an amazing place. You don't realize how big Alaska is until you're actually there. I went on a cruise to Southeast Alaska, and I would think places like Ketchikan and Juneau, I mean, they're closer to where I live in the San Francisco Bay Area than Boston is. So I would imagine that 2 to 3 days to Southeast Alaska is reasonable. But the northern tip of Alaska, Prudhoe Bay, I think it's called, where the Alaska pipeline starts. That's like 800 miles north of Seward, Alaska. 800 miles, right? That's like the length of California practically. I mean, that's a huge distance. Alaska is like half the size of the US. It's twice as big as Texas. People don't realize how big it is. Anyway, I'm digressing. The point being that the US Postal Service is really good about getting first class sent postcards in the hands of your interested prospects within 2 to 3 business days, and probably an extra day or 2 for Alaska or Hawaii.
One thing that we also did not touch on, and maybe we can dig a little more into the technology and how it's actually working, is we're not able to deliver postcards to 100% of the visitors. I believe you said that it averages 50 to 60% of unidentified visitors. Is that accurate?
So that's pretty accurate. So on average, we always state to our agency clients, look, for every 100 visitors that are unknown that come to your website, we're likely to match half of them. If we do better than that, think of that as icing on the cake. Sometimes we might see 55 or 60%, or even a little bit higher. But on average, it's going to be around 50%. That's what we average. So the good news is we're only sending postcards to those that we match. So we're not wasting any of your clients' money. So that's important to note. So it's not perfect. We can't get 100%, but nobody can. Today, there's no technology that allows you to match 100%. It's impossible, simply because there are people that opt out when they go to websites, and they opt out on tracking. So you're not going to get those. And then there's other things that involve, I identity data and the matching of that identity data, which just doesn't allow you to get 100%, just not possible. So 50%, I believe, is an industry high. Most of the folks out there, typically you see around 35 or 40% as a match. So we're higher than most, if not the highest in the industry.
And the way it happens, as I understand it, is that you've got access to data that matches the IP address, the unique identifier of the computer, to a physical location, a physical address. And people move. They haven't been at a certain location long enough to establish that location. So is that accurate? Is that how the underlying general technological approach?
So actually, there's some truth to that, what you stated. And a lot of the companies today do rely on IP address for matching. But it's not as good as first-party cookie, which is what we rely on. It is first-party cookie matching is much better. First-party cookies aren't going away. They're here to stay forever. So you are going to have higher accuracy leveraging that. One of the problems with solely relying on IP addressing for your matches is stacked environments. So when I say stacked, think a 10-story condominium complex. It's a little bit more difficult to get matches, 9th floor building, apartment C, 8th floor apartment C, 6th floor apartment C. Sometimes it's harder to get those matches relying on IP address matching. It's possible, but you're going to get lower match rates naturally. You're going to get lower match rates. So we've preferred since our inception to leverage first-party cookie data as our matching source. We have found it to be the best and most reliable consistently. And
that brings up another important point for the audience to know is that this is a residential. We can identify residential visitors and not commercial visitors. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the way we put it is we don't have business addresses. So, 123 Corporation on 567 Elm Street, we're not going to be able to match to that address because it's not part of our sources that we're using. That doesn't mean we can't match a business address because with, I believe it's something like 35 million Americans now working from home. Their home address is their business address. There's another 20 million Americans that work hybrid. And the fact is a lot of people do use their business address as their mailing address. So in those cases, we will see matches, but you're not going to have a 50% match rate or anywhere close to that. If you're purely looking at business addresses, it's going to be a much, much lower match rate.
And I mean, it makes sense. If you happen to be targeting IBM, knowing you may be able to send a postcard to the IBM headquarters, or the office building, but you're not going to be able to pick out that Sue Smith was the person who was looking at the site. And that's another interesting side note too. My recollection from our earlier conversation is that if Sam Smith and Sheila Smith live in the same household, this technology knows that it's Sheila on the website and not Sam, and addresses the postcard to Sheila Smith at that address and not the Sam Smith household, the Sam Smith family. Is that correct?
That's correct. And it's also an important differentiator for Navistone. We are not sending postcards to dear resident or dear homeowner, right? Our postcards are going to the name of the individual who was most likely surfing on your client's site. And that's kind of the beauty of the personalization. And I might add, because I know we're coming up against the clock here shortly, Navistone accounts for 1 in every 50 postcards mailed today, marketing postcards mailed today in the United States. So we are not only the best player in this space with the best technology and the coolest features, but we're also the biggest in our space. So it's pretty cool to be associated with a company that is really setting all kinds of records every day.
That's awesome. And thank you for watching the time. I was so caught up in my list of questions that I didn't notice it. So one last one and we'll wrap up. If somebody's interested in using Navistone and they find their way to your website, are individuals going to be able to use your service, or are they going to have to come to an agency such as OutMarket.Pro to execute their strategy?
The way to look at it is really my team and our business. We are in the channel, of course, and we're responsible for an ecosystem that consists of marketing agencies across the United States that serve mostly smaller businesses. So think of SMBs for the most part, maybe some mid-market, but it's primarily SMBs that these agencies are serving. 94% of all the marketing agencies in the US are themselves SMBs. So they understand already the life, the marketing world of an SMB. And so they're best positioned to serve SMBs. So if one were to try to come direct to us, we would essentially reroute them to, if we knew if it was your client, we would reroute them to you, or we would reroute them to another marketing agency.
Awesome. Well, Richard, this has been really valuable. I appreciate being able to dig down as deeply as we have been. So thanks for joining me today to talk more about Navistone and digitally powered direct mail. You can tell how enthused I am, and we're beginning to reach out to our clients to offer the service. To learn more about Navistone, check out the show notes below. We'll have that information as well as ours at OutMarket.Pro. If you're interested in pursuing this technology or any of our services, please contact us with that information down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell if you did like the episode, and that way you'll get more of the same. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Richard, thanks again.
My pleasure, Mark. Thank you for having me.